Please welcome Rubrik co-founder and CEO, Bipul Sinha.
All right. How is everyone doing? Welcome. I have been waiting for this day for far too long. We planned our first Rubrik Forward conference in 2020 in Chicago, and we couldn't make it happen because of pandemic. So I'm so glad to see all of you here and so excited for this day, for this event. So once again, welcome. It's all of you that has brought Rubrik to this point. From a little fledgling startup 8 years ago, Rubrik is here with more than 4,000 customers, more than 2,300 employees, product in almost 20 countries, people in almost 20 countries, product installed in almost 55 countries. So first of all, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who had joined us at our viewing parties as well as digitally. In the next 2 days, you are going to see the future of cybersecurity, how we are reimagining data and data security, and what it means to protect your business. So let's get started. I wanted to take you guys to 1989. A very interesting year in history. This is the year when Berlin Wall came down. This is the year when Microsoft released its Office products that changed productivity tools and in some ways Office productivity. This is the year when Nintendo first brought Game Boy. Remember Tetris? Important year. And not that I'm supposed to know this, but Taylor Swift was born on that day, on that year. And I was 16 years old in India. So very important year, not just for the reasons that I listed, but also it was the year when first ransomware attack happened. First ransomware attack. Somebody called Joseph Pop mailed 20,000 floppy disks to the attendees of a AIDS conference. And this attack encrypted file names, and Joseph demanded $189 to be sent to a PO box in Panama. Cryptocurrency didn't exist back then. And many people could not recover from this attack. They lost their life's work and data. So that's how long this menace has existed. There is a ransomware attack happening once every 11 seconds. Just think about it. How much of our digital life is impacted by this? So the question is, why is this happening and why is the frequency so high? I believe that we are in a perfect storm. Just like complex weather systems give rise to unprecedented storms, we are in this scenario where a confluence of things have brought ransomware, which is 33 years old, to even an accelerated pace. Obviously, the last 2 years, all of our personal and professional lives have been impacted by pandemic. Our work is in large part digital. We are buying more and more and consuming and interacting with each other digitally. That has dramatically expanded the surface area of attack. And attackers have found a soft underbelly of our digital life. And on top of it, you now have cryptocurrency, which gives anonymity and cross-border currency that somebody could demand by keeping your data hostage. If you think about it, as a startup, folks look for product market fit. After 33 years, ransomware found a perfect product market fit. Anonymous currency, too much data, and too much digital. And finally, nation states have gotten into this action. They figure that geopolitical, physical wars, although necessary, as we are seeing in Ukraine-Russia conflict, but the cyber war is becoming a larger part of the socioeconomic warfare because it attacks the very heart of economic activities, and it's too easy to do. Heck, there is a ransomware as a service that anybody can use, pay for it, and attack. And what is also interesting is even the hacker groups are taking sides. You heard Conti Group supported Russia, Anonymous came out in support of Ukraine, and this is just the beginning of what to come. So these three things is really fueling ransomware. And what it is doing is it is attacking our digital life. If you think about our life today, we work digitally, we interact with each other in our personal life digitally. You pick up phone, you text your friends, you consume content or social media. We are transacting more digitally, and ransomware is locking that digital transaction. It is creating friction and cost to our digital life. So much so that it fundamentally threatens the very foundation of our economy. Ransomware is the biggest threat. According to some studies, in 3 years, cybercrime will cost $10 trillion to the world. $10 trillion. That's half of the US economy. And if ransomware a country, it will be third largest GDP. That's how big the cyber threat and cyber impact is. So the question is, why have we not stopped it? All the tools and technology in the last 30 years, why have they not stopped attacks from happening? If you think about it, cybersecurity industry has focused on infrastructure security, cloud security, across prevention, detection, investigation, tools from EDR, XDR, network IDS, IPS, firewall, everything from access control to log sniffing has not stopped it. Obviously, you need infrastructure security because if you live in a house, you can't keep your windows and doors open. That has to be locked and secured. But why is it not enough? It is not enough because the nature of attack has changed. Nature of attack has gone from technological attack to more playing with our human mind and emotions. It's more psychological. Before you could compute that this offer for a free cruise is from bad guys, you click. These attackers have studied behavioral economics. They understand that your intuitive brain can't compute such threats. They react faster than their thoughtful brain will say, stop, don't do it. And 1 in 10,000, 1 in 1 million attack getting in does asymmetric damage. Because the question is not preventing 99.999%, the question is, how do you not let the one that gets in completely disrupt your business? So we have to rethink the whole cyber strategy. Obviously, we have to do prevention, detection, and investigation, but we have to fundamentally also think that asymmetric one attack that gets in, how do we drive fundamental resiliency to our business? How do we ensure that one that gets in doesn't do tremendous damage? If you think about it, data is your most important asset. These attacks are not happening to keep your server or network hostage. Those are fungible. You can buy it or you can rent it from the cloud. But they are going after your data. So to drive resiliency, you need to think about data resiliency, because you can recreate everything else around your data. So fundamental resiliency will come from fundamental data security. And a combination of infrastructure security and the data security is the full zero trust security that you can drive in your organization end to end. The future of cybersecurity is data security. Because if your data is available, if your data has integrity, if your data has trust, you can rebuild your business. Also think about it. All the money that you are spending buying, designing AI ML algorithms, buying, designing BI stack is of no use if you don't trust your data, if you don't know whether your data has been manipulated. Heck, you don't know if the data is even available. Somebody could have locked it. So the most important problem of today is data security. Because if your data is secure, your business is secure. So let's unpack what it means to have data security. Fundamental thing about data security is data resilience, which means that data is always available to you, to the right user on the right platform at the right time for the right duration, whenever you want it, no matter what kind of attacks are happening. Second most important thing is your data needs fundamental observability. I know there have been a lot of talks and companies and technologies around observability, but they are looking at syslog and machine log, secondary, tertiary data to compute attack, to see if the attack is happening. But do we even know what is happening to the core business data that you all rely on to run your business? You need observability in your core foundational business data. Your data has to tell you what is happening to it. Is it under attack? Unusual activities are happening to it. And finally, how do you quarantine bad content? How do you ensure that a malware is not recovered? so that you don't go back and reinfect your system and start the whole cycle all over again? How do you also ensure that your clean data is recovered to the right point before the anomalous activity is started? Doing recovery is not enough. Doing right recovery with the right data and precluding bad data is critical. So the combination of resilience, observability, and recovery is foundational, fundamental data security. And if your data is secure, your business is secure. So how did we and Rubrik came to this? I want to again take you back 8 years ago when 4 of us sat in a small room at our VC office planning world domination. Literally, anybody who looked at us back then and thought these 4 guys will go create a company was essentially a laughable matter. But we had a dream. The dream was to create an enduring institution, an enduring company, a company that will last longer than our professional career. We wanted to build the most important cloud company that other people were not thinking about. And if you think about it, what were the 2 big trends in 2014? Data and security. So the idea was, how do we create something at the intersection of data and security as a new thing? But coming from a venture capital background, you don't create product that market doesn't know about. Market has to know and recognize the problem. Market has to have budget. Market has to have somebody responsible for this thing. But if you think about it, in the IT department, there is no such thing as data security. So we had a different idea. The idea was that if you look at every IT department, you have a backup and recovery tool. And backup and recovery has unstated, has been the foundational, fundamental strategy, data security strategy. So our idea was that how do we transform backup and recovery into a data security platform? So the idea was to create a data security platform, but go fix backup and recovery in a unique way, and then drive data security from there. So we built, so if you look at the market, folks were selling a storage-oriented backup recovery or legacy software on a 3-tier architecture-oriented backup recovery. We didn't take either of the 2 paths. We created a brand new software that combined the metadata and data together and drove zero trust in your data. And that zero trust meant is fully authenticated, natively immutable and air-gapped, uses machine learning, artificial intelligence, and ability to quarantine and recover. So let me introduce to you the big announcement that we are doing today, which is Rubrik Security Cloud. Rubrik Security Cloud is a culmination of last many years of our work and fundamentally thinking, how do we drive data security? How do you create a platform where you secure all data, whether the data lives in your enterprise or cloud or SaaS? How do you ensure that this data is fundamentally air-gapped and immutable? How do you ensure that you apply machine learning, artificial intelligence to your core data to drive fundamental observability? How do you ensure that you have fundamental data recovery uniformly applied across all your data. You have same policy across all your data. We built Rubrik Security Cloud with the zero trust foundational principle to deliver all of it. Not only that, we also are releasing a new thing called Rubrik Security Command Center. It's the single place that you can actually understand what is the security score for all your data. It is continuously monitors. It uses machine intelligence to drive this so that in one glance you know whether your business is secure or not. On top of it, we also built threat hunting and threat containment. Now you can connect your Yara rules from your XDR tools all the way into the data and see if there is a bad content, who put it there, how do you connect the dots, how do you not recover it. And finally, we also expanded cloud protection. And so a lot of new things are coming into Microsoft 365 with respect to data sensitivity, ransomware attack, or the extent of the attack, how far, how deep it went, what kind of data it touched. Fundamentally, we built Rubrik Security Cloud on machine learning artificial intelligence. If you think about it, the technology today, machine learning artificial intelligence, is required for cybersecurity because the volume and variability of attack has gone beyond human comprehension. You and I cannot look at all the sources and all the origins and all changes that attacks are doing to compute what is happening. You need fundamental machine intelligence to connect the dots and to tell you what is happening. And that's the future of cybersecurity. Machine learning algorithms applied to your actual business data to drive intelligence, security intelligence from data. And that's what Rubrik Security Cloud is. Fundamentally securing your data anywhere it is, enterprise, cloud, SaaS, applying machine learning algorithms to tell you what is happening to it, if there is an attack, extent of the attack, and for you to quickly recover. Let me take you back into 1989 one more time. It was the same year in which World Wide Web was invented. And that really created this awesome new world of digital. And 33 years down the line, that very foundation of our digital life is under attack. And we have to foundationally think differently to keep our way of life, to not let the attackers increase the cost of doing business in digital. We have to fundamentally think resilience, because you can't shut the door, can't prevent and detect attacks. You need to be fundamentally resilient. You need to embrace resiliency. You need to embrace data security. That's what Rubrik is doing. Rubrik is pioneering the future of data security. I want to invite all of you to come on this journey with us, to co-create, imagine and dreaming together of a new world where every piece of data is secure. Because when your data is secure, your business is secure, you have peace of mind. We are going to build Rubrik into a category creating company. Rubrik is a cybersecurity company. And we are together, you and us, creating this future of data security. So please come on this journey with us. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. All right. As part of the last couple of years of thinking cybersecurity and the future of cybersecurity, we have been very lucky to have outstanding leaders and organizations that we work with. And one such great mind is Wendy Whitmore. Wendy is Senior Vice President at Palo Alto Network, running their Unit 42, which is their threat analysis and cybersecurity consulting division. She has long experience in helping businesses and governments understand cyber threats. She is also a board member of the inaugural Department of Homeland Security Cyber Review Task Force. Very excited to welcome Wendy. So good to see you. So there has been a lot of talks and discussion and news about cybersecurity, cyber attack. You and your team do a lot of work in this space. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what is Unit 42.
Absolutely. So Unit 42 is Palo Alto's group of threat researchers, analysts, and incident responders who specialize in security consulting and really solving our clients' most challenging problems. So we take a threat-informed approach from the research we do, the analysis we do, integrate that into investigations. We also really focus on assessing security controls, helping to transform resilience, which you so aptly highlighted in your keynote. And then if an incident does occur, we certainly respond incredibly rapidly. Last but not least, we have teams of really bright people who are partnering with world-class organizations worldwide to really solve our clients' most challenging problems.
You guys have been doing outstanding work. I mean, just in the last year, you guys produced 650 reports over, and your team dealt with over 1,300 matters. Like, give us a sense of like what is happening in and around cybersecurity. What are the trends that are developing?
Well, there's no shortage of topics to talk about, right? When it comes to cybersecurity, I mean, it's no sooner that you wake up in the morning and you can likely see the next headline in the news. One of those headlines that's become so prevalent is ransomware, which again, you highlighted so critically. And the reality is it's not a nuisance, as it started off many years ago, I think, being a bit of a nuisance. It's become one of the most critical business problems that organizations face, whether they're large or small. And we recently released our annual ransomware threat report. Some of the trends we highlighted over the past year were that the average demand of a ransomware payment rose to $2.2 million. That's almost a 150% increase year over year. Average payments were just around $550,000 US dollars.
Wow.
That increased 80%. And what's also become commonplace is that attackers are no longer just stealing and encrypting your data, but they're looking for multiple ways to extort you so that they can command payment. And our team alone identified over 2,500 victims who we worked with that had their information publicly posted on these leak sites with the intent to cause reputational damage by these types of attacks.
It's amazing how thriving is this ransomware economy is. Average companies can't double the revenues, but they seem to be doubling so rapidly. What is also interesting is the nation states have gotten into this action. I was reading some reports around nation states buying zero-day attack as like a stockpile of weapon that they can unleash. Also, the geopolitical situation around Russia, Ukraine. Like, what are you seeing, like when you talk to your customers and clients? What are they seeing? What are you seeing across your daily activities? particularly around nation state and geopolitical issues?
So I think nation state and geopolitical actions as they relate to cybercrime have certainly never become more prevalent than they are today, unfortunately due to the war that's going on in Ukraine with Russia. And so specific to that conflict, most of the activity that we've seen thus far is related to Ukrainian organizations, whether they're government related or critical infrastructure attacks. However, that doesn't mean that we and organizations throughout the world don't need to remain vigilant in terms of really not becoming complacent and understanding what to look for. So now is the time to be testing your security controls, your incident response plans, making sure you know how to get a hold of your employees and your key team members in advance of an attack. And certainly if your primary infrastructure is taken offline, can you reach out and you know how to reach them via phone or some sort of infrastructure outside, right, of your most common infrastructure. Now is the time to really be locking those controls down. Similarly, you know, as we've seen, we're talking nation states, but going back to these ransomware operators, with the onset of the pandemic, we really observed them maturing their service operations, and in particular, putting time towards their business and maturing those plans. And so it's very common for them to have teams where they have HR team members, they have recruiters, they have a very clear, defined and delegated infrastructure where there are certain attackers who will be managing infrastructure, certain that will be responsible for code development, and then execution of the attacks. And so that's enabled them as well to increase automation. So not only automation of their activities on the back end, but automation of scanning for new victims. So, you know, we talk about the speed of attacks and that not being, you know, human speed anymore, but really being one in where these attackers are have a tremendous amount of money to be made, unfortunately, and these attacks really are going to continue to remain while it remains lucrative for them to conduct them.
It's amazing. Folks are getting ready and wearing nice dresses to go to work in North Korea just to attack us. I mean, it's like a new world we are living in, where on one side you have attacker increasing the cost for all of us, and then the defenders are trying to keep the digital economy, which is so good for us because it's deflationary and all of that. In terms of your clients, and what are you advising them in terms of where they should invest in, how you see new trends developing, what are the areas that they are going and investing into projects and money?
You know, so we talked about certainly ransomware and the increase in automation of those types of attacks. So I think the good news is, one, on the cyber insurance side, we've seen insurers really focus on ways that organizations can proactively prepare for attacks and detect them quickly. The reality is that perimeter security, if it ever was enough, it certainly is no longer enough today. And so what that means is that we need to be able to first understand where your most critical data exists, but then be able to inspect it at levels to understand if that data has changed, and you certainly need to know who has access to it. So these concepts of zero trust have really existed in the incident response and investigations world, right, for decades, because you know, you'll meet a group of people that certainly don't trust anything, right? They don't trust the data, they don't trust who might have access to it, and we need to employ, right, those techniques across the industry so that we can understand and be able to understand who has access to our data network. But from this whole ecosystem of service providers, these supply chain attacks are going to continue to occur, so incredibly important for us to be able to always pinpoint data, who has access to it, and what actions have been taken. And then certainly, as in relation to that, preparedness. So really fundamentally having an incident response plan so that you can get back to business as quickly as possible, which means that we start operationalizing this idea of resilience as it applies to attacks.
Absolutely. One thing that we are also seeing as a trend is attacks have become so hard and so complex that it has gone beyond human comprehension. Are you seeing like the customers and your clients have high awareness about machine learning, artificial intelligence, applied into cybersecurity?
Absolutely seeing the progression, but no doubt we're not where we need to be just yet. You see the attackers really leveraging automation very effectively, whether it's scanning for new business victims, whether it's in their operations, and being able to share information rapidly throughout their teams worldwide. So for us, it's absolutely critical to be operating at the pace of attacks, or ideally faster than those pace of attacks. There's no doubt that's going to require AI and machine learning moving forward. I think the ability also, we've talked about data, right, and the need to inspect it. So really to have teams of people or technological capabilities who can be hunting within your environment and automating detections as they come out. You know, the Log4j attacks that occurred, vulnerabilities, that occurred in December, and then the subsequent attacks towards those, right? Those are a great example of a widespread attack. We're going to likely continue to see more of those, but the ability to quickly inspect your data, know where these vulnerabilities exist, and patch rapidly is key to getting back to business as quickly as possible.
This has been such a fascinating conversation, Wendy. We can talk all day about like so many dimensions of cybersecurity. Yes. We have a cybersecurity panel in the afternoon where you will join Sujat Kent, Rachel Radcliffe, and John Swaz. Folks, please join us for that fireside chat about future of cybersecurity. Thank you, Wendy, for making time for this. Such a fascinating conversation, and thank you for your support.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome Rubrik President Dan Rogers.
Well, it's so great to see you all in person. It really is great to have our first user conference here in San Diego. And thanks to the 14,000 registered attendees that are watching this virtually as well around the world. So we're going to put on a great show for you here today. So just hearing this morning's conversation, sometimes you can feel like it's an uneven playing field. The cyber attackers have got new weapons. The sophistication of attacks is growing. Well, what can we do to level that playing field? And one of the things we want to talk about here is, what if you could recruit your data to help you in the fight against ransomware and against adversaries? And the question I wanted to ask is, what if your data could tell its own story? What kind of things would you ask the data? How could data be part of your cyber response? Well, you'd maybe want to know, well, what kind of data do we have, and where the heck is all of our data? You'd want to know, who are the adversaries? You'd want to know, are there any threats lingering in our data? What's changed in our data? And in fact, many of the people across your organization have questions of the data. If you think about the security operations teams, you think about the system administrators, the risk governance and compliance teams, they want to know, has there been any activity on our data, any unusual anomalies in our data? They want to know, is there any sensitive data in our environment? And how's that been changing? Has that been exfiltrated in any way? They also want to know, if we did need to recover, when should we recover from? When was the original point of infection? And it turns out, if you don't have the answers to these questions, if you don't know if there's been any unusual activity, you don't know if there's any sensitive data that's been exfiltrated, and you have no idea when malware first infected your systems, then you have absolutely zero chance of recovering in the event of a ransomware attack. And ultimately, you have to pay the ransom. So with data observability, this is where you get the chance to start to answer these questions. So let's take a look at what data observability really is. So data observability begins with this concept. We take all of your data across your enterprise apps, your cloud apps, your SaaS apps, and we're going to secure and manage that. But because we have all this data, we have a huge time series of data, and we've got the content, the users, the access, the metadata about that data. If you think of a given application, maybe we've taken snapshots of that application for every 12 hours for a series of years. You can imagine tens, hundreds of thousands of data points. And when you think of hundreds of thousands of data points, this is kind of machine learning manna. This is what machine learning loves, because you can train machine learning models when you have lots of data points. So the first thing I want to talk about is how do we monitor that data for things like ransomware? Well, it turns out that because we've got all of this data, we can create a historic baseline. And data scientists will understand that historic baselines are really important, because when you have a historic baseline, then you can understand anomalies. In fact, as we look at the very latest snapshot, we essentially compare that against the training model of all prior snapshots. And we say, is anything unusual here? We can detect these anomalous patterns. And very specifically, we can see exactly where the anomaly began and how quickly and how fast this anomaly spread and what the scope of the spread was for this anomaly. And in some ways, really only companies like Rubrik have this data. We can build this machine learning model because we have this history, this longitudinal view of your data. So this is ransomware monitoring in action. Now let's look at the second monitor here, which is sensitive data monitoring. So here the idea is we take the last snapshot and we do a bunch of scanning on that snapshot, and we say, let's scan it against some privacy regulations, whether that's GDPR or in this case, PII. And we have pre-described all of the fields that are in all of these regulations, data fields like social security numbers, credit card numbers. And then we can look through that snapshot and identify exactly which files and folders that sensitive data is in. And this is happening automatically from what was hitherto a data protection service. So the third monitor I want to talk about is a thing called threat hunting. So threat hunting is where we look at things like Yara rules, file patterns, and file hashes. And again, we're going to scan now through the longitudinal view of all your data to figure out, are any of those present? Are any of those indicators of compromise present in your data? And when were they present in your data? And you see this kind of blinking light of red that was there. This is the original point of infection. And once we know that, we can actually quarantine that data to make sure that we don't reintroduce that infection and create Groundhog Day in the system. Together, this is what data observability is. This is what it looks like to recruit your data. So that's data observability. Quickly monitor your environment for all of the data risks, whether that's ransomware, whether that's understanding where your sensitive data is and the risk of exfiltration, or whether that's malware and indicators of compromise, and figuring out when that's first infected your system so that you can quarantine that data. Now, earlier this weekend, I actually caught up with a great customer of ours, a company called GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. And I was talking with Agam Urapier a little bit about data security. He was supposed to be here. He's actually in transit from India, and he actually jumped into a hotel and did a recording because his flight wasn't going to make it on time. So here's a little snippet of my conversation with Agam as we talk about things like data observability and how this can be a game changer for GSK as they're producing amazing pharmaceuticals, vaccines, helping with oncology research, and really doing some noble work for us. So I'm going to play you a little video. Thank you, Agam. I know you couldn't join us in person, but I know you're in transit. Thank you, Agam, for doing this a little bit earlier over the weekend. So let's play the video. Now, I'm sure everyone is familiar with GSK, but tell us a little bit more about GSK. What are some of the core missions that you have?
So as you know, that GSK is one of the top pharma companies, and our purpose is basically we unite science, talent, and technology to get ahead of disease together. And basically we do vaccines and as well as the medicines for our patients. And as well as we strongly believe that being a pharma company, that we focus on doing the right thing and making sure that there's integrity and care as people are counting on us.
I know as you think about the patients that you serve, the customers that you serve, and the speed of science and technology, what does something like data security mean for your business?
Yeah, I mean, look, as you're aware, Dan, that data has been, and even more so, has become the left, center, right for everything that we do, right? Right from the drug discovery, research and development to drug manufacturing, the whole process, right from plant, make, source, distribution, as well as the commercial aspect of it. I mean, everything is done and the data in the center of it. And data security is absolutely crucial to make sure that we're protecting our IP, that we're making sure we're protecting the quality and the security, and as well as the safety of data, and making sure that the drug actually reached to all the patients who are desperately waiting for it, right? And it is very important for us that we secure our data in order to deliver all of that is required.
And then tell us a little about Rubrik. You've been a customer of ours and we're so thankful for that. Well, why did you choose Rubrik and how do we help you?
Yeah, so look, as you're aware, Dan, that a lot of focus has been to making sure that we have a lot of threat detection and making sure that we have a lot of protection from it. And if you look at it, it's always been kind of parametric protection from any threat from outside, making sure that we have data protected in terms of how we think traditionally aspect of it, right? But the growing need has always been now in last, especially in the past few years, is that focusing on how do we really making sure that there is a lot more data observability, right? There's a lot more monitoring aspect of it, and making sure, very importantly, that our recovery of data is actually spot on. Because traditionally, the data recovery has been based on the errors, based on the physical disasters, based on the alternate sites aspect of it. But now, keeping in mind that cybersecurity and recovery from cyber threat is also one of the key components. So as we started looking into our backup and recovery solutions, we kept that as one of the key aspect of it, that, how can we really detect, as something like ransomware or to similar kind of threats? And how to really make sure that the data that we are backing up, the data that we are actually creating for recovery actually can do the job, and then can do the job actually in the speed. So when we did that evaluation and we did a lot of market scanning, we went very thorough and over the period of time, and we did a lot of our own testing and so forth. And hence we landed with Rubrik. It was a very critical strategic decision for us to making sure that we're selecting the right platform and making sure that our recovery and backup is no longer just the data recovery, but also data protection, especially from cyber resiliency perspective.
It's been a real pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation, Agam, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, and good luck with the conference, Dan.
Well, that was so great to hear from Agam. And, I started to appreciate GlaxoSmithKline is essentially a data company. All the research they're doing is data. So data for those companies is very much tantamount to the quality of patient care and the quality of life that they're hoping to bring to the world. So truly noble work, and it's great to be partnering with them on that. Now, from the largest pharmaceutical companies to more of a local healthcare company, I'm going to now talk to Bill Hudson. He's the CIO of Integris Health. That's an Oklahoma healthcare system, actually the 25th largest healthcare system in the US. That includes hospitals and surgeries. So I'd like to welcome on stage Bill Hudson. Well, thanks for joining us, Bill. It's great to see you here.
Great to see you. Always happy to help.
So give us a little bit on Integris Health. Not everyone's familiar with it. I became super familiar with it, obviously working with you over the years, but tell the audience a little bit about Integris.
Integris Health is responsible for about 18 hospitals in Oklahoma, the largest health system in Oklahoma. We serve over 1 million people in the Oklahoma City area and across the state.
And then, you've been a long-time customer of Rubrik. You give us lots of feedback. You help push us forward.
Sometimes good.
No, we really appreciate it. So what keeps you coming back?
When I went to Integris, one of the first things I said to my team and the board was that we are going to have a bad day. There was nothing we can do to prevent it. We can prepare, we can be as vigilant as possible. We're going to have a bad day. And one of the first things I wanted to do was to make sure that if we did have that bad day, that we could recover our data. And so for me, my first job was making sure that we had good backups we could trust, with a partner I could trust, that would really help us prevent having that bad day as much as possible.
Now, you literally, thanks for squeezing us into your super busy week. I know you had your son's graduation, but you literally had a board meeting, I think maybe yesterday, on this exact topic. So can you maybe just share a little bit about what kind of things are the board asking you vis-a-vis data and data security?
Well, I've been with Integris less than 6 months at this point. And the very first board meeting that I presented at, we talked about data security and the risk around data security. In the board meeting yesterday, we talked about disaster recovery and our plans around disaster recovery. And again, I talked about one of the first things we did was making sure that we put our plan together. It was based upon making sure that we had our data. And it was really kind of interesting because boards have gotten a lot more technically savvy over the years. I mean, I was in the conversation yesterday, they started talking about public cloud and private cloud, and like, so that's definitely a conversation we had 5 years ago. And then I have the CEO and board members talking about immutable backups. Do we have air gap? And I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of ways to handle this, and we had to kind of step them back away from the technology and talk a little bit about the processes we're putting in place and the partnerships we're putting in place to have a really good, solid foundation. It's interesting, though. This is front and center topic. This is front and center conversations that boards are having across the country, especially in healthcare. I don't think there's ever been a time where we've been more under the microscope or being attacked. If we go back, pre-COVID, we were getting attacked on a regular basis. Literally 6 months post-COVID, the threat and the number of people trying to attack us is up 10x. This is just people like knocking on our door randomly trying to get into the environment. And so the risks are real, and the threat for healthcare is real.
Yeah, it's one of the kind of dark sides of the pandemic is the spike in attacks, particularly around healthcare. In fact, I was reading some of the Unit 42 research, and it's something like 60% of healthcare institutions pay the ransom, serially do so. So definitely, a huge spike there. You mentioned the board. Is it good having the board ask all these technology questions? Is that a good thing? How does that feel?
It's good when you can answer the question.
Yep.
Yeah, it's first of all, having a tech savvy board is always great. It's support. It can be really supportive. And honestly, if you can't answer those hard questions, you probably don't deserve to be standing there. But no, I think that the fact that the board and leadership and management have really kind of shifted to security was something that was off to the side, just make sure it was being done, to something that's now like, okay, this is super important. We can't meet mission. We can't take care of people. We can't care for our patients in our community. And if you think about really the most health systems response to COVID, and I think the things that I'm most proud of, my previous organization, John Muir Health even, is that we met the needs of our community in a primarily digital way. From registration for vaccinations, to registrations and proof that you've had a vaccination, to scheduling, to taking care of patients at home. Those are all super cool things that we weren't doing 2 or 3 years ago in any kind of meaningful way. And so we've moved forward really, really quickly. Well, healthcare is already under attack, and now you've got all these extra ingress points to the organization, the risk, you've got people at risk, and how we've used data and how we're accessing connections with our patients and our community are more digital than they've ever been. That is just more opportunities for those bad guys to come in. And so it's really important to make sure that you're having the right conversations and you have the right tools in place to make sure that you can protect that investment.
And then some of the things you're hearing around data observability, getting a bit of a beat on some of those risks that you see in your data, hopefully that's kind of music to your ears.
I think that's really important. I mean, so I have a good friend of mine that I'd worked with for a number of years in a previous role that had moved on to Rubrik, and when I first started talking about it, I kind of laughed and said, "You're never going to get a meeting with a CIO again." And then when I started seeing what Rubrik was doing and some of the things that you guys were bringing to the table around being able to predict and use machine learning and analytics to kind of say, hey, there could be something bad happening here. This is really important. I mean, this is really taking a space that had been kind of backburnered and was oversaturated and kind of reinvented it. And to me, this was groundbreaking. And so I think having a partner that can help me look at my data and say, hey, pay attention, something bad could be happening over here, that's huge. And so that's part of the reason that I've engaged with you guys so often.
Well, Bill, it's a real pleasure having you here. Thank you for giving us your time. I'm sure you'll be around the conference. I don't want everyone to kind of storm you, but someone that we all learn from, and I'm sure that you'd be happy to talk to some people as you walk around.
I'll probably be safe.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Thank you again, Bill Hudson and Agam there. Some great stories. So for the next piece, we're going to look at some of the people on the teams that we're talking about. So some of the people on teams like Bill's teams. Then we're going to look at a few characters and how they interact with data. We'll look at the life of an IT systems administrator. We'll look at the life of a security operations analyst. And we'll look at the life of an incident responder. So we're going to go into demo land at this point. And welcoming to demo land is our very own Christy Cunningham. By day, she is, welcome, Christy. so by day, many of you will recognize her. She's actually in the field as a systems engineer. But by night, and for this demo here, she's going to play the role of an IT systems administrator. So Christy, what we're going to look at here?
Well, my company was hit by ransomware last year, and I've never felt more powerless. I'm sitting on a treasure trove of data, but I was unable to provide the security team with any information that was actionable. Since then, our company purchased Rubrik as part of our security strategy, and I'm able to provide a lot more information. So let me show you how we use it. So just this morning, I was alerted that we have 12 anomalies in our environment. The easy thing to do next is just to click investigate, and let's see what's going on. Here you can see that we have a number of servers that have been impacted with anomalous events, and we've got suspicious activity. We see files that were deleted, added, and modified.
Okay, so this is, as a systems administrator, you're now understanding anomalous patterns in your data. Is this something you used to be able to do? How would you do this before?
This was a very manual effort before. This was something that we would actually have to go through and scrub, and we'd never be able to see the blast radius as easily as we can with Rubrik today.
All right.
So now that we've actually seen the blast radius, let's take a look at the file server, the top one that was impacted that's got the most activity on it. Here you can see that we actually have a lot of activity that took place on May 13th. Friday the 13th, of course, which is a very unlucky day, but we also know that attackers like to target nights, holidays, and weekends, trying to catch short-staffed IT departments off guard. So this can be a great insight into help us investigating this further, Dan. Now let's dive a little bit deeper and see what else Rubrik is telling us. Okay, so this one's big because it actually shows us that we also have high levels of encryption in the environment, which is valuable data as we start digging into this a little bit deeper.
Okay, so that's a big deal. You've now,
yes.
In your role, you've kind of almost stretched beyond your bounds because you're actually saying, I'm noticing an encryption event, and this seems like an early sign of ransomware, right?
100%. And the important thing to also note is that the other tools that are out in the market right now only give you evidence of change. A lot of times what happens there is you end up with admins getting alert fatigue because they're getting a constant, barrage of false positives. So this is really actionable information that I can provide to my security team. Next up, let's go ahead and see a little bit more about the server. And we can see here that we've got folders that were impacted from product, HR, finance, and security, with a lot of suspicious activity. We're probably going to want to dig into this deeper because I'm going to guess that there's sensitive data in these folders, and Rubrik can also help us tell a little bit more about that with other products that we have. But before we do any of that, let me go ahead and download this and send this over to our security team. Oh, this is my phone.
You didn't switch it off for the event?
No, sorry.
All right, that's okay.
Phone's always on, but this is our security team.
Oh, okay, all right.
Hi, yeah. No, yeah, I know we've been impacted. I just downloaded a report. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you right now, and I'll see you in a couple minutes, okay? Yeah, okay, bye. Sorry, Dan, I gotta run.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Christy. That was Christy's acting debut. Thank you, Christy. That was awesome. Okay, so for our next demo, we're actually going to take now a look at the life of someone in the security operations team. To do that, we're going to welcome on stage Michael Oglesby. So Michael, come on up. So Michael, I see you're carrying a trumpet there. Is that just the usual thing? You just doing?
Yeah, usual thing. Actually, the DJ and I just got done with a gig, and it was super, super cool. I'm sad you missed it.
Awesome. And Michael actually is in the band, so I think we've disrupted, the security operations person. Disrupted his flow here. So.
That's right.
But what are we going to see today, Michael? What are you going to show us?
So part of my job as a SOC analyst is to work with our compliance team on sensitive data. And in the past, it's just been a complete manual process that has just been terrible. No matter how much we train our team around sensitive data, they keep putting it in the wrong places. So I've been having to spend nights and weekends working with them, making sure the sensitive data is updated in the CMDB. Nights and weekends are my time to be a musician. It's time to gig. So how can I gig and practice when I'm spending so much time trying to find sensitive data?
All right, so what are we going to take a look at?
All right, so let's get started. So as you can see here, we have got top risk policies. We can see what information we have out here. And in our environment, we have a lot of sensitive data. So we have everything from PII to GDPR. So as you can see here, we have a lot of sensitive data hits on PII. So let's take a deeper look. Yeah, so as we can see here, we've got some credit card information, we've got some social security numbers, IP addresses, and really this isn't good, but ultimately this would have been really helpful for me last year when we were under a ransomware attack. So we were flying completely blind. We actually didn't know what data they had access to, what they might have exfiltrated, and it really was a problem for us. Ultimately, we had to pay that ransom because they were threatening to release our information and we didn't know what they had. All right, so with Rubrik, I can see these top risk objects, and I can also see everything associated with it. So what's interesting is I know that this file server should not have any sensitive data.
All right, so you found a file server that's got a bunch of exposed sensitive data, and it's got a bunch of users probably accessing that who shouldn't be. That sounds like a bit of an important discovery for
Yeah, it's a big red flag. It's a very important discovery, and I'm going to drill down deeper so we can find some additional details about it. Yeah, so there's a lot of departmental shares here, accounting, finance, HR, you can see all of this. And this accounting folder actually has a lot of sensitive data hits. So we can look at this and we can see some of the files that are associated with these different sensitive data hits and the classification that we are looking for. And now I can even look at the users to see who has access to this. So as we look at the users, and I can see that everyone has full control, which that's not good. The owner, Bateman, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he remembers that ever since that attack last year, we've really focused on those zero trust principles. And he didn't get that memo, that's for sure.
So, you just discovered, some sensitive data in the environment, and
That's right.
You're going to be a real powerful force in helping your organization get better. Sounds like you can get back to your band practice now. I can't let you go without playing us a tune, though. So,
all right.
Why don't you give it a whirl? Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. All right, so that was sensitive data monitoring. So quickly discovered where the sensitive data is. We understood against those 60 predefined templates exactly what sensitive data we're dealing with, which files and folders were affected. We could easily understand the relationship to users, and if users that shouldn't have access to that had access to it, and then ultimately we can match it up with any exfiltration risk. All right, so for the third persona here, we're going to look at the life now of an incident responder. And to do that, I'd like to welcome on stage Brandy Phillips. Brandy, welcome. All right, so Brandy, you got a trumpet for us? You got some other instrument you're going to play?
I don't, but I did save the best for last.
All right, so what are we going to take a look at?
So today we will take you on a threat hunt. As an incident responder, it's my job to make sure that everybody can recover quickly and react fast. The challenges with that is that we haven't been able to determine how to recover quickly. With Rubrik, we've been able to go through, find the clean copy, and recover that without having to do additional backups and spin up backups and other backups. So let me take you on a hunt.
Let's take a rip.
Are you ready?
All right.
Yeah. Today we're going to start our threat hunt. When we start the threat hunt, I'll use a Yara rule that was provided to me by my security team, but you also can go in and use file hashes and file patterns if you know what you're looking for. Today we'll use the Yara rule. So here I'll paste in the Yara rule with all the indicators of compromise. This Yara rule is specifically around the Ryuk, which has been going around. I think everybody's familiar with it. And we will look for patterns and hashes within that data to see if we can find any hits within our infrastructure. So let's go to the next. We can do a most recent snapshot if we know what we're looking for and want to be proactive. But because we have not run this in our infrastructure, we're going to take this Yara rule and set it back 2 weeks, from May 1st through May 17th at 12 o'clock, of course. Now we're going to run and see what Rubrik finds within our infrastructure. Oh my gosh, there's 52 hits? Wow, my security team owes me lunch now.
So you just scanned like the last 14 days. You were very forensic. There was a specific thing you were looking for, a specific Yara rule in this case, that Ryuk piece that we all know is kind of going around. And you essentially forensically looked through those backups and figured out the exact point of infection. That sounds like there's going to be a bit of a game changer here.
Oh, huge game changer. Let's see if we can see what servers were infected. So I can see that more than one server has been hit with this. Let's see if we can find when the Yara rule first found it hit. Over here, I see it hit, the first snapshot was May 3rd. That's over 14 days ago. That means our last clean recovery point is May 2nd. I can't believe we didn't know this was in our infrastructure. I better let our security team know.
Well, that's awesome. You know, Brandy, I think you've just shown what big help the incident response team can be now for the rest of the organization, doing this very pinpoint forensic discovery. So thank you, Brandy. Thanks for everything you do for this company and for our company as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. All right, so that was threat monitoring and hunting. We were able to pinpoint the discovery of specific Yara rule in that case, but also file patterns and file hashes. And then collect the evidence that we might need for any post-incident reviews. So I also want to tell you that, you know, because we're at the heart of this data security solution, we stood up a ransomware response team. This is a team that's available to every single Rubrik customer. And this is a team that's dedicated 24/7 to helping you in the event, heaven forbid, that you need the help 24/7. And at this point, obviously, we've seen hundreds of patents, so we have hundreds of best practices to help you go through this entire process. And you know, this is funny, this is what I was told by our support team. We'll stay until we're told to go away. Okay, so the rest of the conference, you're going to have a bunch of fun. There's some exciting keynotes here. This afternoon, you have this panel conversation. I think it's going to be great with Suzette Kent, Wendy again, Rachel Ratcliffe. And that's going to be hosted by John Schwartz. You're going to hear from our co-founders, Nitro and Soham, tomorrow, and they'll have a discussion with Chris Krebs, which I think everyone will find fascinating, Jim Davis as well from UCI Health. And then there's going to have a great discussion, panel discussion with Spike Lee, which I'm personally looking forward to. You'll also have fun doing all the 35 plus breakouts, hands-on labs to get you really skilled up, and then a ransomware recovery workshop, which is a tabletop exercise to simulate exactly what would happen, how you'd go through the steps, how you'd use Rubrik to make sure that you're as ready as you can be. So this is how it all comes together. Data observability is at the center of our data security strategy. And every single service that we have follows zero trust principles. What is zero trust? This is the idea that we don't trust anybody. We don't trust any system, any machine, any administrator until otherwise authenticated. And at that point, every service becomes a zero trust service. And when we do so, we're able to follow the highest standards of NIST security. So this is a NIST security platform. You saw ransomware monitoring, you saw sensitive data monitoring and investigation, you saw threat hunting and investigation. Together, this is what data security is. Because when you secure your data, your business becomes unstoppable. Hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.